Welcome back, everyone, as we get into part 2 about simplifying expressions. So our learning target for this part is I can simplify an algebraic expression by combining like terms. So let's jump right into some problems. These will be a little more complicated probably than the ones we did in the previous video. So you have 8x plus 3 minus 11x plus 4. Now remember, we're going to simplify. We're not trying to find what x equals. There's no equal sign in here. So that's one thing you'll want to remember. Don't find x. I promise you won't be able to do it. I promise equal signs won't magically appear. You're not able to solve it because it's just an expression and there's no equal sign. So all we're going to do for our final answer is we're going to write an expression. So we have 8x, and I want to look for any like terms, and it looks like we have a minus 11x, okay, and that looks like all the x's. And then I have plus 3, so there's a constant. And I have plus 4, so there's a constant. And we're going to add the coefficients. And remember from the last video, coefficients are the numbers that are in front of the variables. And the exponents will not change. They'll be the same. Just like we talked about in class, if you add 6 apples and 4 apples, you're not going to end up with 10 oranges. You're going to have 10 apples. So same thing, when you add x's to x's, you don't end up with x squareds. You still have x's at the end. So let's combine our like terms. So we have to do 8 minus 11 for the x's, since those are the coefficients. So we'll end up with negative 3 x's. And then when I do positive 3 and add positive 4, I get plus 7. So my answer is negative 3x plus 7. Okay, and again, I cannot turn this into 4x. The 3x and the 7 are not like terms, so I have to keep them separated. And again, I can't find what x equals. There's no equal sign. I just leave the expression as my final answer. Okay, our next problem, 9 minus 4x minus 3 plus 6x. Now, we've got a bunch of things going on here. So, just like we did when we had numbers, we're going to make our little PEMDAS checklist to make sure that we do the order of operations correctly. Okay, so first parentheses, and I have x minus 3 that's inside the parentheses. However, those are not like terms. I'm not allowed to combine them. They have to stay separated, so the parentheses part is done. There's no exponents. That part's done. Multiplication and division. I have this negative 4 here, and this negative 4 is touching the parentheses where the x minus 3 is. So that means I'm going to have to do distribution, and I'm going to have to multiply this negative 4 into the parentheses. Now notice, because of this minus sign here, this is actually a negative 4 that's going to be multiplied to the x, and it's a negative 4 that's going to be multiplied to the negative 3. Many times students forget when there's a negative sign here that negative, that minus, also has to be distributed to both terms that are in the parentheses. So, when I do this, I'm going to have negative 4 times x, and I'm also going to have negative 4 times negative 3. So I'll have 9 minus 4x, and now since I have a negative times a negative, it's going to end up being plus 12, and then plus 6x. So again, don't forget, if you have minus and then a number and it's all touching the parentheses, you've got to remember to distribute that negative sign when you're multiplying as well. Okay, so now we combine the like terms. I have positive 9 and positive 12 as constants, so that's 21. I have negative 4x and positive 6x for my x's, so that'll give me 2x. And I end up with 21 plus 2x as my final answer. And that takes care of our addition and subtraction. Okay, let's look at just a few things to, again, make sure we're only putting like terms together. So 2xy minus 4y plus 5x minus 2x plus 7y. So first thing, I have xy's, and I have 7xy. Okay, I look, there's a y, so there's the minus 4y, and it doesn't look like there are any other y's. And then it looks like we have a plus 5x, and we also have a minus 2x. So those are x's, and so there's the like terms that we'll be able to put together. So the 2xy's and the 7xy's, again, I just add the coefficients. That's 9xy. Negative 4y is my only y, so I have to keep that separated. And then plus 5x minus 2x, those are my x's, I have to keep them separated. And again, since none of these are like terms, I'll have 3 terms in my final answer. So I have 9xy minus 4y plus 3x. Okay, same thing to kind of get you the same concept, 4x squared minus 8x plus 4 plus 10x squared plus x. So I'm going to start with the 4x squared. And remember, I need to have both the x and the exponent of 2. So the plus 10x squared has that. I have the minus 8x. So I need to have an x. And here's the x. Now one thing you got to remember, when you have just an x by itself, x is the same as 1x. So when you're adding numbers together, and they have x's, if you have a single x or a single x squared or an x cubed, that's like 1x. Okay, and then finally, I have this constant here of plus 4. So we'll combine our like terms, the 4x squared and the 10x squared, add to 14x squared. The minus 8x and the plus x, those will add to negative 7x. And then the plus 4, that's the only constant there. So we have 14x squared minus 7x plus 4. Okay, finally, we're going to do 2 problems that look really similar, but are really different and really often confused. And again, we're going to go back to our little PEMDAS checklist. Okay, so left expression, parentheses, 2x minus 1, not like terms, done. No exponents. Multiply and divide. Notice here, this minus sign is touching the parentheses, but the 13 is separated from it. So the 13 is this whole separate term. It's not going to get distributed. However, this minus sign here is just like a negative 1, so this negative touching the parentheses is going to have to be distributed. So I'm going to have the opposite of 2x, and I'm also going to have the opposite of negative 1. So now I'll have 13, I'll have minus 2x, and since I have the opposite of negative 1, it's going to be plus 1. And then I combine my like terms, so 13 plus positive 1, that gives me 14. And then I have the minus 2x. So this one gives me 14 minus 2x. Now this one, notice that the 13's actually touching the parentheses, and the negative sign is with it, so the negative 13 is the whole number that's going to be distributed into the parentheses. Again, notice on the left one, the 13 separated by the minus sign, and on the right one, the negative 13 is actually touching the parentheses. So here I distribute negative 13 times 2x, negative 13 times negative 1, and so I end up with negative 26x plus 13. So that concludes our series on simplifying expressions. Now go practice those problems.